Hi, everybody. I'm Cheryl Hutto, as most of you already know, and today I have a guest on that I'm very excited about, and I'm excited to welcome Aimee Desjardin.
Hi.
And Aimee is the director at Wellspring Village in Danvers, Mass. Welcome, Aimee, and tell us just a little bit more about what you do.
So I am a memory care director in assisted living. Brightview Senior Living is a senior living company. We operate senior living facilities from Maryland all the way up the East Coast. And Wellspring Village is the dementia care unit, the memory care unit, or neighborhood, as we like to call them here. I care for 25 residents with various stages of dementia, different types of dementia. And kind of help them through their day to day, and also coach the associates here as well.
Terrific. And I neglected to say when we began just a moment ago that what we plan to talk about today is the validation method of communicating with those people with dementia, or as Naomi Feil calls it, the old people, right? Or the
Right.
confused people.
Yeah.
Uh, and Aimee, I know that you have a lot of experience with the validation method. So first of all, could you describe to people viewing this what it is in case they haven't heard of it?
Sure. Validation is a technique that is used to communicate with folks who are experiencing various types of dementia or memory loss or cognitive loss. It really values the person, it values the individual, and it doesn't discriminate in any way. It's very open-minded, it's very empathetic. There's a lot of empathy involved. And it is really quite rewarding for those who practice it. There are some really special moments that happen when you practice validation. It doesn't happen every time. There's not always a breakthrough, but when there is a breakthrough, it's really it's quite special because it just shows us that person is still in there, regardless of the extent of their disease process.
Right. They're always there in there somewhere, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
Great. So where would you like to begin, Aimee? You said that you might take us through some basic steps of how carers at home might be able to deal with this or learn some basic things about it. So
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
ahead.
The beautiful thing about validation is that anybody can do it. When you study validation, it does go very deep. There's a lot of psychological theory involved. There's a lot of study involved if you want to get really deep into it, but there are more shallow levels that include very easy techniques that are easy to grasp and
Right.
easy to use. So the few things that there are 14 basic techniques for validation, but I would like to talk about 8 of them today because there are 8 of them that I feel that anybody can use. I can talk a little bit about each one and maybe give an example on how we use those. And if you have any questions or you want some more clarification, we can talk about that too.
Great. Let's go.
Okay. So one of the things, the first technique I'll talk about, probably the most important technique of them all, is centering yourself. Before you attempt to communicate with someone who has dementia, who's having a difficult time expressing themselves, it's extremely important to be centered. And what we mean by centering is actually a very ancient concept of allowing yourself to be in the here and now and not being controlled by any outside negative thoughts or feelings. It really is a way of emptying your mind and finding a peace and a calm so that you can be very much in the moment with that person. One of the easiest ways to center yourself is doing what they call a body scan. It takes about 5 minutes. You can do a body scan or you can do simple breathing techniques. Either of those are very, very easy ways to center yourself. There are a ton of ways that you can center yourself. People have many, many different ways that they do it, but these 2 are very easy and they're very quick.
We want that.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, yeah. So it comes in handy when you can do something in 5 minutes. So, a simple breathing technique would be to just close your eyes and focus on your breaths. And you just focus on your breaths until all of your thoughts are emptied from your mind and you feel very, very calm. A lot of people have difficulty with that, myself included. It's really hard sometimes to quiet the mind. So another way to center yourself is to do what they call a body scan. And this is where you sit very still in a chair and you close your eyes and you focus on the top of your head, how it feels, and you become very aware of any tension or any feelings that might be there. You release that, you relax that part of your body, and then you move down. Move down to your neck. You do the same thing at your neck. Release any tension, move down to your shoulders, and you go all the way down your entire body. That one takes about 5 minutes. But when you focus on each individual area of your body and you become aware of any tension or feelings that might be held there, and then you release them, it allows you to become very calm and centered in that moment. And centering yourself is very important when you're going to have an interaction with someone who has dementia, because then you're not influenced by any baggage that you might have.
Right.
Yeah.
Important. Yeah.
Yes, very
Okay,
much.
Great.
So another technique that we use is called rephrasing. Once you are centered, rephrasing is something that is a way of letting the person know that you understand what they're saying to them and that you've heard them. Rephrasing is very simple. If someone says to you, "She stole my purse," you can respond, "Your purse was stolen?" So you say the same thing that they've said to you, you repeat it back maybe in a slightly different pattern, but you're just basically saying the same thing right back to them. And it's important that when you rephrase something back to someone that you're communicating with, that you match their intensity or their energy, you match their volume, or you match, if they sound angry, you make sure that you sound angry as well. Or if they sound scared, you make sure that you also portray that fear in your voice when you say it back. Right. Rephrasing is the first step of letting that person know, I heard you. I understood what you were saying, and that's a way of allowing them to open up to then communicate with you some more.
Right. And Aimee, so often some of the people that I work with, or some people who are going to be watching this, would automatically say to your purse being stolen, no, your purse, don't worry, your purse wasn't stolen. And we always get that wrong. So that's not rephrasing. Right.
When our first instinct is to correct and to make it better, is to make whatever is wrong better. And even if the purse wasn't really stolen and it's right there on the chair next to them, nothing is going to make it better until you let them know that you've understood what they've said to you. Correcting them is not going to get you anywhere, because in their mind, in that moment, the purse was stolen. Even if it's in their hand, the purse was stolen.
Right.
So it's really important that you, before you move forward with that communication, you let them know, I heard you and I understood you. And so that's rephrasing.
Okay, thank you. Great.
Another one that we use is reminiscing. This is very simple. Reminiscing is really a great way to communicate with people, talking about things that have always been in their past. When they say things like, I never sleep at night, right? I never sleep at night. You might be able to respond by saying, was there ever a time that you did sleep at night? Tell me about a time when you were able to sleep at night. Bringing them back to the past. Bringing them back to a time that they might be able to remember might help you get more information about what they're experiencing now. So reminiscing, using the past to refer to something that's happening or ailing them now, is really quite helpful. I have a resident now who says, my family never picks up the phone when I call them. And of course we know they do. She doesn't remember that the family picks up the phone, but she'll say, I never talk to my family. They never pick up the phone. And so one of the things that I'll say is, tell me about when you did talk to your family. Tell me about things what was it like? What time of day did you talk to your family? Did you talk with them at dinner time? We bring that up from the past, and it allows you to then get them to talk more about what they're feeling. And you get more information about that. It's not about the fact that that person hasn't picked up the phone. They're expressing to you that they miss their loved one. Even if they just talked to their loved one 20 minutes ago and they come to you and say, my daughter never picks up the phone.
Right.
And I say, well, tell me about when you did talk to your daughter. Right. And she'll tell me more about, what her daughter has, what it was like. Well, she used to come home from school every day and we would sit and have a snack every afternoon. And I, you must really miss that, and that is validating what she's experiencing in that moment. And again, you get more information out of her when you use reminiscing. So that's another great technique.
Yeah, that's a great technique. I love that. Thanks.
Sure. Another one that's really, really simple is maintaining genuine and close eye contact. This is, anybody can do this. Some people I know get uncomfortable with close and long, prolonged eye contact, but it's unbelievably effective when you're talking with someone with dementia or trying to communicate with them, even especially with those who are in the more advanced stages. When you have folks who are, very nonverbal, I find that being very close and maintaining very close eye contact really has an amazing effect. I often find that they will talk. They will try harder to use words when you do that. So even those folks who don't use words very often or at all, sometimes a simple act of using prolonged eye contact will encourage them to talk with you. Even further beyond that, there are folks who maybe have no ability to talk anymore and will be in that vegetative state where their eyes are closed most of the time. They're not asleep, but their eyes are closed and they seem to not be there. Mm-hmm. If you hold that eye contact, you may get them to all of a sudden look you right in the eye. And even that is a form of communication.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
It's really powerful, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. It's, you have moments like that where, and I've had moments in training where I've said to some of my associates, they're like, well, she never talks. So, she's sitting by the window all day. She never talks. And I said, well, have you ever tried getting her to look you in the eye? And they're, they look at me like, well, why would I do that? And I'm like, no, seriously, if she's not going to talk to you, see if she'll look you in the eye. Yeah. And when you catch that moment and you're eye to eye, just give her a smile.
Right.
And see what happens.
And occasionally, not every time, but that can bring forth some, a verbal conversation, right? Even if it's brief.
It very, very oftentimes does lead to a conversation, even if it's very brief. Yeah. Hello, I see you, yes. And it's, you have those moments and, even if all you get back is a smile, hey, you got a smile, you got that eye contact, you got a smile, that's communication. So absolutely. It's really, really special. Another technique that we like to use is mirroring. Mirroring goes hand in hand with rephrasing. Mirroring takes rephrasing one step a little bit further. You can mirror with your voice. You can, like we talked about, rephrasing is actually taking the words and giving them back to that person, or taking the emotion and giving it back to that person. Mirroring, you can mirror with your tone. You can mirror with your volume, and you can also mirror with your body, which is really interesting. I had a lady years ago in one of my neighborhoods who would get very frantic in the evening hours, and she would start to move all of the chairs from the activity room down this one hallway. And one after the other, she would leave her walker, she would go get these chairs, and she would march them down this hallway and just line them up in a long line. And for the longest time, my associates would call and say, she's putting all the chairs in the hallway again. I don't know why. We can't get her to stop. We've got to move all these. We tell her to stop and she doesn't stop. And I'm like, move the chairs with her.
Ah, great.
Let's see. Why don't you all go grab a chair and let's make a train of people walking down the hallway. Let's all line those chairs up and see what happens. Right. And it was really quite funny, because instead of her responding frustrated, which is what would happen on an evening, every single evening, the associates would come down and they would say, stop putting the chairs in the hallway. And so one evening I said, let's do it with her. And she stopped and looked us right in the eye and she said, yes, 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 yes. And then she sat down and you could see her whole body went calm. And she was so satisfied. And she was like, yes.
Wow.
And Naomi would say that the chair was a symbol for something. She would, if you wanted to get into the deeper layers of validation, Naomi would say that the chair was the symbol from something. Oftentimes a chair is a symbol for usually a male figure, a father figure, which is interesting. I won't go too deep into that, but whatever it was about the chairs, they needed to be in that hallway. And it was a very frantic, she was sweating, she was moving quickly, she was anxious, and it wasn't a comforting thing that she was doing. Right. She was not at ease. But as soon as we all mirrored the behavior and did it with her, she had this relief that came over her body and her mind. And she looked at us all, looked at each one of us in the eye and said, yes, yes, yes. And she was calm and the behavior stopped.
I was just going to ask you if that took care of the every evening chair moving.
It did for a while. It did come back, but then, the associates knew if she's stacking chairs, we're all stacking chairs. So, it became something that was no longer a nightly occurrence.
Right. Oh, so, excellent. Wow.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing, So touch is also a really important technique that is used in validation. You have to be really careful with touch. You have to know in that moment that what you're doing is something that they are ready and willing to receive, which is why it's very important to pay attention to body language. If there's at any moment a pulling back or, if they don't want to be touched, they will let you know in some way. But touch is very powerful. And it can be as simple as a hand on the shoulder, or a taking of the hand underneath the hand and holding the hand. It's just a really powerful form of nonverbal communication, touch. But when you have someone who is very advanced in their dementia, a touch that Naomi teaches people to use is here at the cheekbone, which in infants is if you touch an infant here, it will turn its head towards you, which is an instinct. At birth, at very, very young age, that is, whenever their cheek is touched, there's a reflex to turn the head, almost like a feeding, like towards the mother. Oh. And when you use that touch at the end of their life as well, the cells in their body, Naomi will say this, the cells in their body remember that touch. And it's, you can touch someone's face right here and it will get them to look up. and oftentimes get them to open their eyes. And that instinct comes back, the touch of a mother. And it's really, really, again, quite powerful at the very end of life, when you have this unbelievable disconnection from reality. Using touch like that will immediately bring them back to the here and now and get them to connect with you.
Yeah. So incredible what our bodies remember from birth, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because there's all of these years in between, right? Where you'd be like, why are you touching my face? You know, why?
Totally. Right. Get away from me. You're invading me. Yeah.
Right. Right. And it doesn't mean anything for so long, but then it comes back.
Yes.
You know, when you're in a state, when they're in a state of not really knowing what the world around them is anymore, very much like being an infant. Right. You know, and I don't mean to compare old people with babies, because they're very different, but that, you know, instinctive, something is caring for me feeling, you know, that touch is very, very powerful. And that is, you know, more for the folks who are at the very, very end stages of dementia. Other forms of touch, I mean, taking someone by the hand and dancing with them for a moment, or, you know, taking someone by the elbow, or, you know, a tap on the shoulder. All of these types of things are very valuable when you're communicating in the earlier stages of dementia.
Absolutely.
So touch is a technique that anyone can use.
Right.
But again, you know, you need to be very careful with that and make sure that that person is ready to receive the touch. Right. If there's ever an inkling that they're not willing, then, you know, you must respect that space.
Right. And I think this would be more for a setting such as the setting where you're working, but for the home caregiver, I mean, clearly they would have an idea if their loved one wants to be touched, or
for sure.
Absolutely. So it's almost a no-brainer. And then, you know, before we finish, I don't want to forget, we're not finished, but I want to remember to ask you, during COVID, so many caregivers are unable to get near their loved ones and are trying to communicate. And I did just watch a video with Naomi Feil, which we also neglected to say that she was the founder of this method. I'll be sure to write about that when I post this.
Yes.
But she was saying that, you know, we can use eye contact. There are other ways to communicate besides touch.
Yes.
Because right now with COVID, for some people, it's impossible to touch.
Yes. And it has been throughout my experience here in a community setting. It's been one of the most challenging times in my professional life. And I think in my life, I think that's true for a lot of people, but especially doing what we do, not being able to use touch has been very, very difficult. So that actually perfectly brings me to the other technique that I was going to talk about, which is music.
Okay.
Yeah, music is a wonderful way to communicate with people of all ages. I don't say that this is only for people with dementia, because boy, is music powerful. And I think a lot of people know that. But, you know, using music that has been important to a specific person in their life is really, I don't know, it's magic. It's the only way to explain it. It's magic. And when you can't use touch, music is a great way to communicate and to connect. I had a resident years ago who was in the Navy. He was a Navy man. And oftentimes when he would get agitated, we would, and we couldn't understand what it was that was agitating him in that moment. We would just start singing Anchors Away. And it just turned him around like you would never believe. And when, you know, any music is good music, but what's really powerful is music that means something specifically to that person. There's a wonderful video of Naomi that I use in training all the time, where she's with a woman named Gladys Wilson, and she uses old church songs in that video with Gladys. And you can YouTube search that video. It's Naomi Feil and Gladys Wilson, and you'll see her practicing some validation techniques. And she starts to sing Jesus Loves Me in the video, and Gladys just comes to life. And she starts by tapping her hand, but next thing you know, she's tapping it to the beat. And it's it really changes the communication in that moment. I had a resident here who passed away actually just last week, and she was unable to communicate at the end of her life, but she was harmonizing to You Are My Sunshine up until the day before she passed away.
Wow.
Yeah. It was amazing. She always loved that song. That song was very special to her. It was special to her family. She sang it to her grandchildren. She sang it her whole life. And throughout the height of COVID, when her family couldn't come visit her, before she had this major decline, we had taken a video of her standing out in our courtyard singing You Are My Sunshine to her daughter through the courtyard gate, and they were singing and harmonizing. And so at the very end of her life, when she had been been confined to her bed for several weeks at that point, and weak and no longer eating, and not really making eye contact anymore, we sang You Are My Sunshine, and I'll be darned if she harmonized. It was amazing. I mean, she couldn't speak, but she could harmonize. So I mean,
that is beautiful. That's really beautiful.
Yeah. So music is always very helpful in validation.
Yeah. All
so
right.
Yeah.
Great. And you have one or two more, don't you? Or
yeah, I do. So I have, let's see, we can talk about using non-threatening factual words too. So this is a really good one. I find that when you're dealing with someone who is having an aggressive behavior, which happens a lot during caregiving, happens a lot in specific tasks like bathing and toileting, which can be very, very difficult caregiving tasks. Using non-threatening and factual words is a way to get them to trust you. So what I mean by that is, instead of saying, "Why are you angry right now?" you could say, "What is making you angry right now?" Okay. So the difference between those two ways of communicating, "Why are you angry right now?" is actually trying to force that person to admit their emotions, or to justify their emotions, or confront their own emotions. Whereas saying, "What is making you angry right now?" is just automatically accepting that they're angry.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay.
I thought for a moment there that, what is making you angry, and what if they don't know? But I guess they can blurt out something, right?
Right. Or they, am I making you angry? And they can say yes.
Yeah.
Or no, right? So, using the who, what, where, when, and how factual kind of questions, as opposed to, making them confront their feelings is, and this one is a little bit more advanced of a technique, but it is something that, if you automatically accept that they're feeling that way and you don't try to change it, it's a fact, right? That person is angry. That's a fact. So we're not going to try and change it. We're not going to make them confront it either. We're not going to, confronting your emotions is something that healthy people can do. That's for therapy, right? That's, exactly. we confront our emotions and we try to wrestle with them, when we're healthy. When someone has dementia, they don't have that ability anymore. So it is really important to remember that and just simply accept, okay, what's making you angry right now? Is it me? Am I making you angry? And then of course, showing that you can put a little distance between yourself and that person, showing through your body language that you're accepting of that. If it's fear, if it's sadness, being factual with them about that emotion is usually really helpful. And again, not trying to change it, just allowing them and accepting this is where they are right now. It's okay for you to be angry. It's okay for you to be sad or fearful. I can't fix what's happening to you. I can't. And our instinct is to make things better. As caregivers, we want to say, don't be angry, don't be sad, it's okay.
Right.
But it's not okay what they're experiencing. It's not okay, and nothing we can do can make it okay.
Right.
So using these facts of the fact is I'm sad or the fact is I'm angry, being very factual is helpful.
Right. I have some caregivers have expressed to me, family caregivers, that, oh, my husband has just become so cranky and he's so grumpy all the time and he's driving me crazy and he hates everything we do. And they've gotten down this rabbit hole. So this could be very helpful. And of course, the family caregiver, as well as the personality of the one who has dementia, everybody brings old stuff to the table, right?
Yeah, and it's easy for me to sit here and say use these techniques because I'm dealing with folks who are not my immediate loved ones. So I can sit here and say that all day, but I'm sure that if it was my own mother or my own spouse, it would be a different story. So again, that's where centering comes in, right? We need to center,
Yes.
release,
Right.
and try again,
Yep.
and allowing that person to feel those hard emotions is hard on the caregiver too, because we need to be able to open ourselves up to let those feelings inside of us, and we don't want to.
No.
Those are hard emotions to deal with. We have our own anger, we have our own sadness, we have our own frustrations. So to make a space inside of yourself to let someone else's anger inside or let someone else's sadness inside is much easier said than done.
Right.
But when you are able to do it, you get amazing results.
Right. And Aimee, you bring up a good point about, this merging, something that we didn't really talk about. So just we could touch on that briefly about validation method is really about walking into, and as Naomi put it on a film recently that I watched, walking into that other person's soul or that other person's spirit and really sharing what they're feeling. And this is, no one is making light of this work. This is big work, right?
Absolutely. It's not easy. It forces you to be spiritually and emotionally vulnerable.
Yes.
But it's very effective. And again, it's not easy. You need to make sure that you have your own support system, and your own, whether it's a spiritual practice or therapy or a creative outlet, something, you got to take care of yourself in order to be able to effectively practice validation and care for someone else, especially if it's in the home, especially, my caregivers here and myself, we go home after 8 hours and a whole new set of caregivers comes in for the next 8 hours. It's not a 24/7 thing. For those who it is a 24/7 thing, boy, do I give them so much credit, and I can't even imagine the stress that must come along with that. But managing your own stress and being very aware of your own limits and boundaries is important. Otherwise, the validation techniques aren't going to work.
That's right. it's one reason that I guess intuitively, even before I understood anything about validation method as a personal support coach for family caregivers, I'm constantly trying to get them to understand the importance of centering,
Yes.
and taking that break and calming their own nervous system, because that's the very beginning. We just have to.
Yeah, yeah, it's the first step. It's the first thing that we talked about this evening. You can't expect to get anywhere with validation, if you don't have that inner peace, even if it's for a few minutes. And sometimes when you're in a validation session with someone, you may even need to take a few breaks in between and step out of the room and breathe and come back. It might take, and you might need to end the session. You might need to say, it's not happening today. There's not going to be a breakthrough. I'm not there, which means I'm not going to get this person through either. And that's okay. You can't beat yourself up for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so many times family caregivers get into a guilt situation because they feel like they are, it's like, oh, I lashed out, blah, blah, blah. It's just a vicious cycle. So
Yeah.
this has been an amazing conversation,
Thank you.
really, Aimee. I'm so
I agree.
grateful to you. And I would, as I said, I will post Naomi Feil's name, but say just a little bit about her. She founded this program or this method in the 1960s, right?
She did. She grew up in a nursing home. When she was a little girl, she lived in a nursing home. Her parents ran a nursing home, and her best friends were the residents who lived there. And as she got older, I believe she studied psychology, which is why so much of what she teaches really incorporates psychology. There's a lot of psychological theory. Stage theories are involved. If you know humanistic psychology and Erik Erikson and Carl Rogers, there's a lot of that. She talks a lot about symbolism as well, which is Carl Jung. So there's a lot of psychology, mixed in there. But that's, to me, that's the beauty of it, because we are dealing with human psychology.
Right.
And she in the 1960s began to develop these theories. And then over her, it was her life's work putting together this technique. And I'm so grateful that she did, because it has absolutely changed my life and changed my career, and helps me help others every day. Both my associates who are learning how to deal with folks, who are living with dementia, and also just in my own interactions with people who have dementia. So she's really amazing. She herself is getting up there in age now. I think she's in her 80s or 90s now.
She's nearly 90. In fact,
Yeah.
the interviewer that I saw the other day referred to her as being 90.
Yeah.
And she's just still phenomenal. But
yeah, I had the pleasure of doing a conference call with her about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And she mentioned on that conference call that she was living with a spouse who had dementia. At the time, her husband had dementia. I'm not sure if he's still living, but she even said herself, she goes, I founded this, and I have days where it's hard because it's my husband.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
Aimee, I'm very grateful, and I know that this is going to be a very popular recorded video for people to see, and hopefully maybe someday you'll come back in the future and we can talk more about it. And
Well, I'll be in touch for sure, Cheryl. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
all right, thank you. Let me stop this recording. Thanks again, Aimee.
Yeah.